Inside the Ottoman palace, there were doors. Most people could never pass. Behind those doors lived the Sultan's family, his heirs, and the future of the throne. But these doors did not simply lead to private rooms. They opened onto the empire's deepest fear, succession. The men who guarded them were not ordinary soldiers. They did not appear on battlefields. They did not command armies, but inside the hidden corridors of the palace they watched who entered, who waited outside, and which messages reached the most protected rooms of the empire. They were the palace eunuchs, and their road to the palace often began far from Istanbul. For many black eunuchs brought into Ottoman service, that road began in distant parts of Africa. It passed through captivity, slave markets, traders, and the harsh routes that led toward Egypt. Before they reached the palace, their lives were changed in a way that could never be undone. They were made eunuchs. This was not only a physical act, it meant taking away the possibility of fatherhood, family, and a return to the life they might have known. After that, they were considered suitable for one of the most guarded worlds in the empire. The Ottoman court believed that men who could not form their own family ties inside the harem could be trusted near the Sultan's family. So people taken from distant lands were placed inside the most private rooms of imperial power. At first, they did not belong to the palace, but over time, some of them became closer to its secrets than almost anyone else. Egypt was one of the most important gateways in this system. It stood between Africa and the Ottoman world as a major passage for people, goods, and power. Those selected for palace service were sent toward Istanbul and prepared for the strict life of the court. They were taught more than simple service. They learned palace language, proper behavior, silence, patience, and the most important rule of all, to know only what they were allowed to know. Inside the palace, being close to the Sultan meant power, but not every road to the Sultan was open. A letter delivered at the right moment, a visitor allowed inside, or a meeting delayed could change who rose and who fell. That is why the man standing at the door of the harem was not merely a guard. He stood where the palace's most private information passed through. The Ottoman palace had different groups of eunuchs. White eunuchs usually served in other inner sections of the palace. Black eunuchs, over time, became closely tied to the imperial harem, and among them, one office became especially influential, the chief black eunuch, known as the Kızlar Ağası or Valide Ağası. He controlled access to the harem. He stood close to the Valide Sultan, the mother of the Sultan, and he became a bridge between the most protected world of the palace and the public world of politics. Ministers could speak in grand halls. Generals could command armies. But the doors of the harem were not open to all of them. The Kızlar Ağası held the keys. This was not loud power. It was quiet power. But beneath that power, there was a painful truth. Many of these men had not chosen palace life. They had been taken from their families, their lands, and the futures they once might have had. The palace could give them rank. It could give them clothing, money, and influence, but it could not erase the loss at the beginning of the road. That is why the story of the palace eunuchs is not simple. They were not only victims. They were not only officials. They were men, shaped by a harsh imperial system, used by it and sometimes raised by it. Some controlled large charitable foundations. Some sponsored mosques, schools, and fountains. Some left their names in palace records. But rising inside the palace was never the completely safe. A man close to secrets was useful, but he could also become frightening. A message delivered to the wrong person could create enemies. A delayed meeting could be read as a political signal in the Ottoman palace. Power did not always sit on the throne. Sometimes it stood beside a locked door. The eunuchs guarded those doors, but in reality, they guarded something larger, the border between the visible empire and the hidden empire, because history is not written only on battlefields. Sometimes it is written in silent corridors, behind closed rooms, and in the moments when one person is allowed in while another is kept outside. The palace eunuchs did not hold only keys, they held secrets, and in the Ottoman palace, no one who stood close to secrets was ever completely safe.